I was in the middle of unpacking groceries when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in my gut told me to pick up. "Is this Evan Thompson?" the voice asked, clipped and emotionless. "Yes," I said slowly. "I'm calling from Lawrence and Mayhew. Your father has passed away. The will is being read on Friday at 10 a.m. And just like that, the world tilted. My father and I hadn't spoken in over 4 years. Not after the fight. Not after he told me I was a disappointment for leaving the family company. I'd chosen to work in nonprofit law, which he considered a waste of a Harvard degree. He never forgave me for walking away from the legacy he built. A real estate empire started from scratch after the war. The irony, I didn't leave out of pride. I left because he made it unbearable to stay. I stared at the wall after the call ended. My hands were still holding a bag of apples I didn't remember picking up. The silence in the room felt suffocating. Would they even want me there? Was I expected to attend? Or worse, was this an invitation to humiliation? I flew back to Connecticut that Thursday. The funeral was cold literally and emotionally. It was a gray morning. The wind bit through my coat as I approached the chapel. Most of the faces were familiar. Too familiar. There was Uncle Raymond, my father's younger brother, smug as ever in his navy cashmere coat. My cousin Spencer, who used to borrow money from Dad like it was candy. And of course, Claire, my half-sister. She stood stiffly in black, clutching a pearl rosary like it was a badge of honor. None of them looked surprised to see me, just annoyed. No one said, "I'm sorry for your loss." No one said anything, really. I sat at the back close to the aisle. No one joined me. As the service ended, I heard someone behind me mutter, "Didn't expect him to show up. Why is he even here? Thought he was cut off." Their whispers weren't subtle. The next morning was the reading. That's when everything began to unravel. The office of Lawrence. And Mayhew was in a sandstone building downtown, sleek, glass-walled, overly modern for such an old-money family. We were all ushered into a conference room. Tension hung thick in the air. Claire sat next to Uncle Raymond. They smiled politely at the attorney, like co-conspirators awaiting victory. I sat alone. "Before we begin," the lawyer said, clearing his throat, "I must remind you all that this will was last updated 8 months ago. 8 months ago was after our last fight, after he said I was dead to him." My chest tightened. Then came the line that shattered me. "The following assets shall be divided among my family, with the exception of my son Evan, who has made it clear he wants no part of this legacy." "He doesn't deserve anything," Uncle Raymond added, almost too casually. "You heard the man." There was a pause. I felt every eye in the room land on me. Claire didn't look surprised. She looked ... satisfied. I sat in stunned silence. I hadn't come for the money. I hadn't expected much. But I didn't expect ... nothing. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? After the reading, I walked out without a word. But as I reached the elevator, the firm's assistant, tan, older woman named Judy, stopped me. "Mr. Thompson, probably shouldn't say this, but your father came in alone for that last revision. No witnesses, no notary, and he looked upset. Really upset." I turned to her, pulse pounding. "Do you think it was altered?" She hesitated. "I think he regretted things, but some people here had ... influence." The doors opened. I stepped inside. I didn't look back. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying his words. He doesn't deserve anything. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I walked away. But I never stopped being his son. That's when I remembered something my father once said at a holiday dinner years ago. Back when we still spoke, "A will doesn't protect the dead. It reveals the living." Opened my laptop. I typed a name I hadn't spoken in years. David Klein, estate law, retired by father's old personal attorney. If anyone would know the truth, it was him. I didn't plan on calling David Klein that night. But when you can't sleep, When your chest feels like it's holding a scream, it's amazing what your fingers do without permission. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Hello. A cautious voice answered. Mr. Klein, this is Evan Thompson. My father's son. There was a pause, then a deep breath. I was wondering when you'd call. David invited me to his cabin the next morning. He'd retired years ago after a stroke, but he still remembered every clause, every signature, every whisper my father ever let slip in confidence. The cabin sat just outside Stamford, quiet, covered in fog. Inside, it smelled like pine and old paper. A fireplace crackled softly. David looked older than I remembered, frail, sharp. Your father came to see me 2 years ago, he said, pouring tea slowly. Said he wanted a version of the will that was clean, one that reflected ... his heart. And did that version include me? I asked. He nodded. Not just included, it favored you. I sat back, stunned. Then how did I end up with nothing? Because that version was never filed, he replied. Your Uncle Raymond interfered. I felt heat rush to my face. Of course, Uncle Raymond, the family strategist. He'd always believed the business belonged to him. He just didn't have the charm to earn it from my father. But with Dad emotionally raw and physically declining, maybe he saw his chance. Back at my hotel, I opened the documents. David had given me an unsigned version of the original will, stated 18 months ago in it. I wasn't just included, I was listed as primary executor. I was meant to take the company too, manage the estate to carry the legacy. The wording was clear, though my son Evan has chosen a different path. He carries the discipline and values I admire. He is to receive the house, the company, and final say over the trust's dispersal. And just below that, a handwritten note. Forgive me for how I've shown my love. I stared at the letter for a long time. My throat tightened. This wasn't about money. This was about truth, about erasure. They had tried to erase me. I called Lawrence and Mayhew the next morning. I'd like to see the notarized will, said. The final one, the one read last Friday. The assistant hesitated. I'm afraid that file is sealed. By who? The executor. Claire, of course. I hung up. I needed help. Not a friend, a weapon. Her name was Alicia Rowe, one of the most feared probate attorneys in New England. I'd once helped her nonprofit foundation pro bono. She owed me a favor. I sent her the documents, the letter, the inconsistencies. And then I waited when she called. Her voice was ice. They're bluffing, Evan. They have no leg to stand on. If that handwritten note matches your father's known penmanship, we can force a freeze. We can shut the entire estate down. The next move had to be precise. We filed an emergency injunction that same afternoon. Claire and Raymond called me. What do you think you're doing? Claire snapped. You think you can crawl back in after walking away? This isn't about crawling, I said quietly. It's about the truth. Then came the line that would haunt me for weeks. You don't deserve anything. Raymond said it coldly, like a judge, like a man convinced of his own version of justice, but he made a mistake. He said it on speakerphone in front of Alicia, and we recorded it the next day. Alicia filed the audio with the court, alongside handwriting analysis and proof of coercion. We weren't just challenging the will now, we were exposing a cover-up. Back in the courtroom weeks later, I sat across from Claire and Raymond. They wore tailored suits and masks of righteousness. The judge flipped through the documents slowly, silently. Then she looked up and said, "This case is not about entitlement. It's about intent. And Mr. Thompson has presented compelling evidence that the decedent's true wishes were not reflected in the final document." Claire's face went pale. Raymond clenched his jaw. Therefore, I am ordering an immediate freeze of all estate assets pending a formal review. I exhaled. Not because I'd won, but because for the first time in years I felt seen. I remembered my father's handwriting, his silence, How he never said the words I needed, but how he tried, in his own flawed way, to correct that in the end. They said I didn't deserve anything. They were wrong. After the freeze was approved, everything slowed down. Money couldn't. Move. Properties couldn't change names. Bank accounts were locked. And every member of my family, every voice that had once silenced mine, was now forced to wait. But that wasn't enough. I didn't just want justice. I wanted proof. Alicia and I met in her office 3 days after the freeze. She had already filed a subpoena for the original version of the will submitted by Claire and Raymond. But what we received raised even more questions. There's no video of the signing, Alicia said, narrowing her eyes. No witnesses. No notary. And the digital copy was scanned from a photocopy. That's not legal, I asked. Not even close. But that wasn't the real problem.